The President of Ireland is the head of state of Ireland and the supreme commander of the Irish Defence Forces. Unless a candidate runs unopposed, the President is directly elected by the people. The President holds office for 7 years, and can be elected for a maximum of 2 terms. The presidency is largely a ceremonial office, but the President does exercise certain limited powers with absolute discretion. The President's official residence is Erris and Uachtarán in Dublin. The office was established by the Constitution of Ireland in 1937, and became internationally recognized as head of state in 1949 following the coming into force of the Republic of Ireland Act. The current president is His Excellency Michael D. Higgins, who was elected on the 29th of October 2011. His inauguration was held on the 11th of November 2011. Ordinary duties and functions. The Constitution of Ireland provides for a parliamentary system of government, under which the role of the head of state is largely a ceremonial one. The President is formally one of 3 parts of the Oireachtas, which also comprises Dáil Éireann and Seanad Éireann. Unlike most other parliamentary democracies, the President is not even the nominal chief executive. Rather, executive authority is expressly vested in the government. The government is obliged, however, to keep the President generally informed on matters of domestic and foreign policy. Most of the functions of the President may be carried out only in accordance with the strict instructions of the Constitution, or the binding advice of the government. The President does, however, possess certain personal powers that may be exercised at his or her discretion. Constitutional functions. The main functions are prescribed by the Constitution. Appoints the government. The President formally appoints the Taoiseach and other ministers, and accepts the resignations. The Taoiseach is appointed upon the nomination of the Dáil, and the President is required to appoint whomever the Dáil designates without the right to decline appointment. The remainder of the Cabinet is appointed upon the nomination of the Taoiseach and approval of the Dáil. As with appointing the Taoiseach, the President is required to make the appointment without the right to appoint someone else. Ministers are dismissed on the advice of the Taoiseach, and the Taoiseach must, unless there is a dissolution of the Dáil, resign upon losing the confidence of the House. Appoints the judiciary. The President appoints the judges to all courts of the Republic of Ireland on the advice of the government. Convenes and dissolves the Dáil. This power is exercised on the advice of the Taoiseach. Government Dáil approval is not needed. The President may only refuse a dissolution when a Taoiseach has lost the confidence of the Dáil. Signs bills into law. The President cannot veto a bill that the Dáil and the Seanad have adopted. However, she may refer it to the Supreme Court to test its constitutionality. If the Supreme Court upholds the bill, the President must sign it. If, however, it is found to be unconstitutional, the President will decline to give assent. Represents the state in foreign affairs. This power is exercised only on the advice of the government. The President accredits ambassadors and receives the letters of credence of foreign diplomats. Ministers sign international treaties in the President's name. Supreme Commander of the Defence Forces. This role is somewhat similar in statute to that of a Commander-in-Chief. An officer's commission is signed and sealed by the President. This is a nominal position, the powers of which are exercised on the advice of the government. Power of pardon. The President, on the advice of the government, has the right of pardon and the power to commute or remit punishment. Pardon for miscarriages of justice has applied rarely. Thomas Quinn in 1940, Brady in 1943, and Nicky Kelly in 1992. The current procedure is specified by Section 7 of the Criminal Procedure Act, 1993. There were plans in 2005 for paramilitary on-the-runs to receive pardons as part of the Northern Ireland peace process, to supplement the 1998 early release of serving prisoners after the Good Friday Agreement. This was controversial and was soon abandoned along with similar British proposals. Power of commutation and remittance are not restricted to the President, though this was the case for death sentences handed down prior to the abolition of capital punishment. Other functions specified by statute or otherwise include: the President is ex officio President of the Irish Red Cross Society. The President appoints, on the advice of the government, the senior professors and chairman of the Council of the Dublin Institute for Advanced Studies, the Governor of the Central Bank of Ireland, the members of the Irish Financial Services Appeals Tribunal, the Ombudsman, and the members of the Garda Síochána Ombudsman Commission. The President appoints one trustee to the Chester Beatty Library. This was specified in Chester Beatty's will and given effect by a 1968 Act of the Oireachtas. The President is the patron of GACE, the President's Award, established by Trust Deed in 1985. The President is the patron of Clans of Ireland, including its Order of Merit, since he so agreed in January 2012. The President confers the title of SAOI on those so elected by the membership of AO's Dana. The President is patron to several charities in Ireland. Special limitations: the President may not leave the state without the consent of the government. Every formal address or message to the nation, or to either or both houses of the Oireachtas, must have prior approval of the government. Other than on these two occasions, there is no limitation on the President's right to speak. While earlier presidents were exceptionally cautious in delivering speeches and on almost every occasion submitted them for vetting, Mary Robinson and Mary McAleese made much more use of the right to speak without government approval, with McAleese doing many live television and radio interviews. Nonetheless, by convention, presidents refrain from direct criticism of the government. Discretionary powers. The President possesses the following powers exercised in his absolute discretion, according to the English version of the Constitution. The Irish version states that these powers are exercised as a Chomhail Fiacutayan, which is usually translated as under his own counsel. Quote, "In the event of a clash between the Irish and English versions of the Constitution, the Irish one is given supremacy. Lawyers have suggested that a clash may exist in this case between both versions of the Constitution, while absolute discretion appears to leave some freedom for maneuver for a president in deciding whether to initiate contact with the opposition. Own counsel has been interpreted by some lawyers as suggesting that no contact whatsoever can take place. As a result of this clash, it is considered controversial for the president to be contacted by the leaders of any political parties in an effort to influence a decision made using the discretionary powers. It is required that, before exercising certain reserve powers, the President consult the Council of State. However, the President is not compelled to act in accordance with the Council's advice. Refusal of a Dáil dissolution: the Taoiseach is required to resign if he has ceased to retain the support of a majority of the Dáil, unless he asks the President to dissolve the Dáil. The President has the right to refuse such a request, in which case the Taoiseach must resign immediately. This power has never been invoked. However, the necessary circumstances existed in 1944, 1982 and 1994. The apparent discrepancy, referred to above, between the Irish and English versions of the Constitution has discouraged presidents from contemplating the use of the power. On the three occasions when the necessary circumstances existed, presidents have adopted an ultra-strict application of a policy of non-contact with the opposition. The most notable instance of this was in January 1982, when Patrick Hillery instructed appointed an aide, Captain Anthony Barber, to ensure that no telephone calls from the opposition were to be passed on to him. Even without this consideration, refusing such a request would arguably create a constitutional crisis, as it is considered a fairly strong constitutional convention that the head of state always grants a parliamentary dissolution, reference of bills to the people if requested to do so by a petition signed by a majority of the membership of the Shanavth, and 1/3 of the membership of the Dáil. The President may, after consultation with the Council of State, decline to sign into law a bill she considers to be of great national importance, until it has been approved by either the people in a referendum or the Dáil reassembling after a general election, held within 18 months. This power has never been used, and no such petition has been invoked. Of the 60 senators, 11 are nominated by the Taoiseach, so there is rarely a majority opposed to a government bill. The President may appoint up to 7 members of the Council of State, and remove or replace such appointed members. The following powers all require prior consultation with the Council of State, although the President need not take its advice. Referral of bills to the Supreme Court. The President may refer a bill, in whole or part, to the Supreme Court to test its constitutionality. If the Supreme Court finds any referred part unconstitutional, the entire bill falls. This power may not be applied to a money bill, a bill to amend the Constitution, or an urgent bill the time for the consideration of which has been abridged in the Shanavth. This is the most widely used reserve power. A full list is at Council of State #referring of bills. In a 1982 judgment delivered under such a referral, Chief Justice Tom O'Higgins bemoaned the crude strictures of the prescribed process, especially the fact that, if the court finds that a bill does not violate the Constitution, this judgment can never subsequently be challenged. Abridgment of the time for bills in the Shanavth. The President may, at the request of the Dáil, impose a time limit on the period during which the Shanavth may consider a bill. The effect of this power is to restrict the power of the Shanavth to delay a bill that the government considers urgent. Appointment of a Committee of Privileges. The President may, if requested to do so by the Shanavth, establish a Committee of Privileges to solve a dispute between the two houses of the Oireachtas as to whether or not a bill is a money bill. Addressed to the Oireachtas. The President may address, or send a message to, either or both houses of the Oireachtas. 4 such addresses have been made, 1 by De Valera, 2 by Robinson, and 1 by McAleese. The approval of the government is needed for the message. In practice, the entire text is submitted. Address to the nation. The President may address a message to the nation, subject to the same conditions as an address to the Oireachtas. This power has never been used. Commonplace messages, such as Christmas greetings, are not considered to qualify. Convention of meetings of the Oireachtas. The President may convene a meeting of either or both houses of the Oireachtas. This power would allow the President to step in if, in extraordinary circumstances, the ordinary procedures for convening the houses had broken down. Selection. The President is directly elected by secret ballot using the alternative vote, the single winner analogue of the single transferable vote. Under the Presidential Elections Act, 1993, a candidate's election formally takes place in the form of a declaration by the returning officer. Where more than one candidate is nominated, the election is adjourned so that a ballot can take place, allowing the electors to choose between candidates. A presidential election is held in time for the winner to take office the day after the end of the incumbent's 7-year term. In the event of premature vacancy, an election must be held within 60 days. Only resident Irish citizens aged 18 or more may vote. A 1983 bill to extend the right to resident British citizens was ruled unconstitutional. candidates must be Irish citizens and over 35 years old. However, there is a discrepancy between the English and Irish language texts of Article 12.4.1 degrees. According to the English text, an eligible candidate has reached his 35th year of age, whereas the Irish text has this as agab wheel cuig bliana trioshit slan. Because a person's 35th year of life begins on his or her 34th birthday, this means there is a year's difference between the minimum ages as stated in the two texts. Various proposals have been made to amend the Constitution so as to eliminate this discrepancy. At present, however, the Irish version of the subsection prevails in accordance with the rules stated in Article 25.5.4 degrees. The current government has introduced the 35th Amendment of the Constitution Bill 2015 to reduce the age of candidacy from 35 to 21, which was put to referendum in May 2015, but the bill was heavily defeated, with approximately 73% of voters voting against reducing the age of eligibility. Presidents can serve a maximum of 2 terms, consecutive or otherwise. They must be nominated by one of the following: at least 20 members of the oireachtas, at least 4 county or city councils themselves. Where only one candidate is nominated, he or she is deemed elected without the need for a ballot. For this reason, where there is a consensus among political parties not to have a contest, the president may be elected without the occurrence of an actual ballot. Since the establishment of the office, this has occurred on 6 occasions. The most recent presidential election was held on the 27th of October 2011. Absence of a president. There is no office of Vice President of Ireland. In the event of a premature vacancy, a successor must be elected within 60 days. In a vacancy where the President is unavailable, the duties and functions of the office are carried out by a Presidential Commission, consisting of the Chief Justice, the Cian Comhail of the Dáil, and the Cathaoirleach of the Seanad. Routine functions, such as signing uncontentious bills into law, have often been fulfilled by the Presidential Commission when the President is abroad on a state visit. The government's power to prevent the President leaving the state is relevant in aligning the diplomatic and legislative calendars. Technically, each President's term of office expires at midnight on the day before the new President's inauguration. Therefore, between midnight and the inauguration the following day, the presidential duties and functions are carried out by the Presidential Commission. The Constitution also empowers the Council of State, acting by a majority of its members, to make such provision as to them may seem meet for the exercise of the duties of the President in any contingency the Constitution does not foresee. However, to date, it has never been necessary for the Council to take up this role. The vacancies in the presidency have occurred 3 times: on the death of Erskine Hamilton Childers in 1974, and on the resignations of Serval O'Dallagh in 1976 and Mary Robinson in 1997. Official residence, salute, style and address. The official residence of the President is Erris and Uish Tarain, located in the Phoenix Park in Dublin. The 92-room building formerly served as the out-of-season residence of the Irish Lord Lieutenant and the residence of 2 of the 3 Irish Governors-General, Tim Healy and James McNeill. The President is normally referred to as President or Uish Taran, rather than Mr., Madam President, or similar forms. The style used is normally His Excellency, Her Excellency. Sometimes people may orally address the President as Your Excellency, or simply President. The presidential salute is taken from the national anthem, Amran Narban. It consists of the first 4 bars followed by the last 5, without lyrics. Inauguration. Under the Constitution, in assuming office the president must subscribe to a formal declaration, made publicly and in the presence of members of both houses of the electors, judges of the Supreme Court and the High Court, and other public personages. The inauguration of the President takes place in St. Patrick's Hall in Dublin Castle. The declaration is specified in Article 12.8 I la there DNA nuletum hact times. Agialad agasadia bugo solantaras go firenich by thy mothacker agasai modadinda bunriact eran agasadi la the kaomnu. Modu algais a chomilianad go dillas coins yasagd our ear cutayarn bun rechtaras and dli. Agasmolandakil adhe acutayanamhr son lisa is fon ivem winter na eran. Dia de mos diradagas de mo chadak. In the presence of Almighty God, I do solemnly and sincerely promise and declare that I will maintain the Constitution of Ireland and uphold its laws, that I will fulfill my duties faithfully and conscientiously in accordance with the Constitution and the law, and that I will dedicate my abilities to the service and the welfare of the people of Ireland. May God direct and sustain me. To date, every president has subscribed to the declaration in Irish. In 1993, the United Nations Human Rights Committee expressed concern that, because of its religious language, the declaration amounts to a religious test for office. The Electors Committee in 1998 recommended that the religious references be made optional. Impeachment and removal from office. The president can be removed from office in 2 ways, neither of which has ever been invoked. The Supreme Court, in a sitting of at least 5 judges, may find the president permanently incapacitated, while the electors may remove the president for stated misbehavior. Either house of the electors may instigate the latter process by passing an impeachment resolution, provided at least 30 members move it and at least 2/3 support it. The other house will then either investigate the stated charges or commission a body to do so, following which at least 2/3 of members must agree both that the president is guilty and that the charges warrant removal. Security and transport. As head of state of Ireland, the president received the highest level of protection in the state. Eris and Irish terrain is protected by armed guards from the Irish Defence Forces at all times, and is encircled by security fencing and intrusion detection systems. At all times the president travels with an armed security detail in Ireland and overseas, which is provided by the Special Detective Unit, an elite wing of the Irish police force. Protection is increased if there is a known threat. The presidential limousine is a Mercedes-Benz S-Class LWB. The presidential limousine is dark navy blue and carries the presidential standard on the left front wing and the tricolor on the right front wing. When traveling, the presidential limousine is always accompanied by support cars and several Garda motorcycle outriders from the Garda Traffic Corps, which form a protective convoy around the car. The presidential state car is a 1947 Rolls-Royce Silver Wraith Landaulet, which is used only for ceremonial occasions. The president also has the full use of all Irish Air Corps aircraft at his disposal if so needed, including helicopters and private jets. History. The office of president was established in 1937, in part as a replacement for the office of Governor-General that existed during the 1922–37 Irish Free State. The 7-year term of office of the president was inspired by that of the presidents of Weimar Germany. At the time the office was established, critics warned that the post might lead to the emergence of a dictatorship. However, these fears plans were not borne out as successive presidents played a limited, largely apolitical role in national affairs. Head of state from 1937 to 1949. During the period of 1937 to 1949, it was unclear whether the Irish head of state was actually the President of Ireland or George VI, the King of Ireland. This period of confusion ended in 1949 when the state was declared to be a republic. The 1937 constitution did not mention the king, nor did it state that the president was head of state, saying rather that the president shall take precedence over all other persons in the state. The president exercised some powers that could be exercised by heads of state, but which could also be exercised by governors or governors general, such as appointing the government and promulgating the law. However, in 1936, George VI had been declared King of Ireland, and, under the External Relations Act of the same year, it was this king who represented the state in its foreign affairs. Treaties, therefore, were signed in the name of the King of Ireland, who also accredited ambassadors and received the letters of credence of foreign diplomats. This role meant, in any case, that George VI was the Irish head of state in the eyes of foreign nations. The Republic of Ireland Act 1948, which came into force in April 1949, proclaimed a republic and transferred the role of representing the state abroad from the monarch to the president. No change was made to the constitution. Evolving role. After the inaugural presidency of Douglas Hyde, who was an inter-party nominee for the office, the nominees of the Fianna Fáil political party won every presidential election until 1990. The party traditionally used the nomination as a reward for its most senior and prominent members, such as party founder and longtime Taoiseach Éamon de Valera and European Commissioner Patrick Hillery. Most of its occupants to the time followed Hyde's precedent-setting conception of the presidency as a conservative, low-key institution that used its ceremonial prestige and few discretionary powers sparingly. In fact, the presidency was such a quiet position that Irish politicians sought to avoid contested presidential elections as often as possible, feeling that the attention such elections would bring to the office was an unnecessary distraction, and office seekers facing economic austerity would often suggest the elimination of the office as a money-saving measure. Despite the historical meekness of the presidency, however, it has been at the center of some high-profile controversies. In particular, the fifth president, Serval O'Dalley, faced a contentious dispute with the government in 1976 over the signing of a bill declaring a state of emergency, which ended in O'Dalley's resignation. His successor, Patrick Hillery, was also involved in a controversy in 1982, when then Taoiseach Garret Fitzgerald requested a dissolution of the Dáil Éireann. Hillery was bombarded with phone calls from opposition members urging him to refuse the request, an action that Hillery saw as highly inappropriate interference with the president's constitutional role and resisted the political pressure. The presidency began to be transformed in the 1990s. Hillary's conduct regarding the dissolution affair in 1982 came to light in 1990, imbuing the office with a new sense of dignity and stability. However, it was Hillary's successor, seventh President Mary Robinson, who ultimately revolutionized the presidency. The winner of an upset victory in the highly controversial election of 1990, Robinson was the Labour nominee, the first president to defeat Fianna Fáil in an election and the first female president. Upon election, however, Robinson took steps to depoliticize the office. She also sought to widen the scope of the presidency, developing new economic, political and cultural links between the state and other countries and cultures, especially those of the Irish diaspora. Robinson used the prestige of the office to activist ends, placing emphasis during her presidency on the needs of developing countries, linking the history of the Great Irish Famine to today's nutrition, poverty and policy issues, attempting to create a bridge of partnership between developed and developing countries.